Len Vanden Bos, welcome to Sports Spectrum. It's so good to see you.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jason.
Absolutely. Always great when we can catch up in person. We're on the other side of the country right now. Mm-hmm. You and I are East Coast guys. You're in Buffalo and I'm in Connecticut. We're in California.
Yeah.
It's not sunny and 80 today, but that's okay.
We did see the sun.
We did see the sun.
My wife and I did go out and identify something we haven't seen for weeks at least.
That's okay. That's a big win.
Yeah,
that's a big win. It's much warmer than it would be if we were home. That's for sure. But I'm glad we're at this conference, but really just glad that we can catch up. And I wanted to wait until now, when I knew I was going to see you, to kind of just talk through everything that transpired, starting with that Monday night game against the Bengals and Damar and all that everybody saw, because I think your role is so unique and you're uniquely positioned as a team chaplain to be there in times of crisis and struggle and in need with players, and this was a different animal. So I wondered if we could start just retracing the steps a little bit and go back to that Monday night and the moment when Damar takes the hit and, everybody's not sure what's going on, but everybody's watching Monday night, and we're all watching and seeing you guys out there.
Yeah, so 5:58 into the first quarter. One of my duties, because I used to coach, is I hold the personnel card boards on the sideline for our defensive backs. So I'm involved a little bit with those guys, and so I'm very close. That hit happened on the hash closest to me, so I was maybe 20 yards from it, and saw him go down. And something I've done for years is just I immediately, their team or our team, somebody gets hurt, I just take a quick knee and pray. And so I did, and when I opened my eyes up, one of the trainers was running past me, and I could see on his face this was not a normal injury. And so rapidly, we could see that he was down, and all the medical people around him. And I walked out on the field like Coach McDermott and some others of us, and we got to the scene, and it was not a good scene. Yeah. It was something that you don't want to see. And so we, several players now had come up, and we began to pray, and it wasn't, we were close enough to hear things like, we don't have a pulse. And, the first responders, our team, their team, and the medical people there independently, to watch them work was incredible. But beyond that, something that was very surreal quickly turned to real. Yeah. And, players now were circled around, and at some point someone made us form a circle around him so that the camera couldn't get as close as it could get. Yeah. I grabbed a couple players' hands, and guys started to pray. And as I looked over there, now Denny Kellington, was doing compressions. He's one of our assistant athletic trainers, and he's, doing compressions. And again, the reality begins to set in that this is, beyond serious. Yeah. And so it was 9 minutes of compressions, and those 9 minutes felt like a half an hour. And we stood up and tried to get a little closer, and guys were all over the map, crying and praying and just in disbelief. Yeah,
there was a lot of shock I sensed on a lot of people's faces on both teams.
Total shock of, is this really happening? Yeah. Is this really happening? And as he continues to do compressions, and you can see him working. I mean, he's working, he's sweating, and you can just see the concern on all these doctors' faces. And I have to be honest, there was a moment there where I thought to myself, he could die. Yeah. He could die right here on national television, right on the, 50-yard line, basically. And so, the only thing I could get out of my mouth as I prayed was, Lord, bring him back. That's all I could say. And I was very emotional. I was crying. I was trying to choke words out, but it was, Lord, bring him back. Lord, bring him back. Yeah. And within those few minutes, we heard that they were bringing the paddles out, and so, again, you realize that they're progressing in this process to try to save the young man's life. And so they clear it and they shock him, and I heard one of the doctors say, we have a pulse. And they immediately, got him up on that thing and into that ambulance. And it was, I went over to the ambulance, and I cut to the side door just to try to grab his hand, even though he was unconscious, and couldn't hear me, but, just try to say a quick prayer for him. And I turned around, and our team was already taking a knee, and I could see Coach McDermott motioning me over. So, I went over in the middle of that prayer and I'm not sure what I said.
Yeah.
But we begged God for his life. I know that.
Yeah.
We just begged God for his life, that he would spare the young man. And then, we got up from that, and it was a series of moments beyond that. At some point we were told we were going to continue to play.
Yes. Yeah.
And I remember going around to players who were on the field, mostly defensive backs. We were on defense, and I spent a lot of time with those guys, going around to some of those guys. And they were I thought to myself, there's no way we can play this game.
Yeah.
And I went over to Coach McDermott, and Zach Taylor was coming over. Mm-hmm. And one of the lessons I've learned in this is, Coach McDermott was tremendous in his leadership that day, because I was right there with him when he came over, and he told Zach, he says, if this game keeps going, great, but I'm going to the hospital.
Right.
And within 30 seconds of him saying that, he said, we're not playing. And he said, everybody, we're going into the locker room. And so that was the first stage of the journey that night.
Man, have you ever seen, and we'll talk, obviously, the prayer was answered. The millions and millions of prayers were answered in many ways, because Damar obviously survived, and it's such an incredible, miraculous story. But have you ever been in anything remotely similar to that in ministry, whether it's with, a football team? I know you were at a church for a very long time serving in ministry. Have you ever seen anything like that?
Not really. The closest thing, I take a group of guys every year down to Angola Prison in Louisiana. I've been doing prison ministry for about 15 years down there. It started when I was at Willow Creek.
Yeah.
But we've been in their hospice, and we've prayed with guys there. We actually had a guy who, an older man who passed away during one of our prayers.
Wow.
And so but a much different setting.
Sure.
Older people that are preparing themselves to die.
Right.
But no, nothing like that. We see a lot of injuries, and we work with guys a lot on their process through injury and as they're going off the field and stuff. But no, nothing like that.
And suddenly, the scriptures that we read, the prayers that we pray, kind of everyday thankfulness, every day, God, help me through this, let me find joy in the midst of struggles and trials. Suddenly all of this is thrust upon this team, the leadership, the faces of the team, the Josh Allens of the team, and then there's your role in carrying on throughout the week. And I remember texting with you, like, the progress every day, it felt like there was just a little bit more glimmer of hope. But take us through the next few days, the next day, getting back to Buffalo and being available for these guys and just hearing and seeing, I don't know, what was that like for you, especially as the chaplain?
Yeah, that night we were in the hospital, myself, Coach McDermott, our owner, and our general manager, a couple of, with their parents. We were there till about 4 a.m, and then met the team at the airport, flew back. We had a team meeting at 10 o'clock that morning, and Sean said, we're going to close this meeting in prayer as a team. So
which is very unusual,
right?
Correct.
And everybody wanted to
Nobody
to participate.
was denying that one. Yeah.
No, but I just prayed the guys through the scripture where it says, we can come to the throne of grace boldly with confidence, and we can ask Him for what we want in our time of need. So I told him that verse, and I said, that's exactly what we're going to do right now.
That's good.
And but we had that was Tuesday morning, and then we had a prayer meeting every morning that week. Just optional for guys to come before meetings, before practice.
I would imagine a lot of guys came.
A lot of guys showed up. A lot of guys who don't usually come to chapel or Bible study showed up.
Yeah.
And as another thing that was amazing leadership from Josh Allen, you mentioned him.
Yeah.
Tuesday night, he opened up his home for the whole team. And he said, anybody wants to come over, I'll have food for everybody, wives, girlfriends, extended family, everybody come over to my house, and we'll just spend time together.
Just be together. Yeah.
And my wife and I went over just for a minute to see a few people, and then we left. But we heard reports from Case and Matt Barkley and other guys that they were there for a long time, and some great conversation took place. They all prayed together. The women prayed together. The men prayed. They prayed as a group. And so that was huge for Josh. Josh, gets the importance of community, and he just opened up his house for guys to come and just process what we've been going through.
Wow.
And so,
well, I want to ask you a couple things here, and I want to get to Josh in a second, because what he said, being up, he's the face of the team as a player, right? Sure. He's the quarterback, and he has this moment when he's up and doing a press conference, and he's just kind of blown away by what the Lord had done, and he's like, God is real. He couldn't deny it, just in what he's seen. Yeah. But before I get to that, I thought, and a couple people asked me to comment on this whole week, just because you saw a community of people coming together and praying. Like the NFL said, not just thoughts and prayers, it was, let's pray for Damar. Yeah, every team was doing this, pray. So prayer was a big thing that week. You saw Dan Orlovsky on ESPN pray on ESPN, which you would never think would happen. So prayer was pretty open. I was telling people, though, and this is going to sound weird, maybe it won't, I don't know, but I thought the Buffalo Bills were as equipped as a team to handle that as any team in any sport, much less the NFL, because of the leadership of Coach McDermott, because of his faith and his belief, because you were there, because the team was filled with guys like Case Keenum, as you mentioned. I just thought there was a culture there that was equipped to handle. Again, this is not something you want any team to ever handle, but it was the leadership and the way it was in place was there. So yes, okay, the storm came, but it was first things first, and you guys were able to, I think, handle that as best as possible. Did you feel that way?
Yeah, I do. So much credit for our organization goes to Coach McDermott, Brandon Beane, the structure that they have in place of having support people like myself there full-time to work with these guys and help build the culture and build these relationships so that when things happen like this and the adversity of a season, occurs like it always does, that there's already relationships built, there's deep roots, and so that we can lean into each other. I think also the city of Buffalo provides that for us because there's nothing else to do. we have each other, and everybody lives within 10 minutes of each other. And so that community that we've helped build and we're so blessed to be a part of, I think really showed up, and it's been a season of adversity from, the shooting that was at the grocery store in May. Our team went and rallied around that community on the east side. Dawson Knox lost his brother this year. We had multiple snowstorms. We just had a lot of adversity. We had big injuries to Micah Hyde and Von Miller that we haven't had in the past. And I believe that, for such a time as this sometimes, that those opportunities find you. And we're just blessed to have a lot of support people around to help us walk through it.
We're talking to Len Vanden Bos here on Sports Spectrum. He's the Director of Player Development with the Buffalo Bills, and he's also their team chaplain. We mentioned Josh. You got Josh Allen standing up there on a podium in disbelief in many ways, just overcome with these words, God is real. And I couldn't help but think about Josh and other players on the team that may not have been always vocal about their faith or whatever, but we're so overcome and couldn't doubt the reality of who God is. Did you sense that within Josh's leadership, but also within other players?
Yeah, absolutely. That was really prompted by the Damar incident for sure, and what happened after that week. But then we returned the opening kickoff for a touchdown, right?
Against the Patriots.
I was talking to Matt Slater today, and he said, "Hey, we knew going into that game we had no chance." So we really didn't play that well that day, but we got off to a great start. And but we talked about that the following week in Bible study. That this idea that God is real. And my question back to some of the players as we discussed that was, so how is that going to impact your life? Right?
It's one thing to believe.
Right. I mean, okay, God's real, and if it took this for you to, for that to resonate with you, to land with you, great, but I think you could go out and take a walk and come back with a lot more evidence than a kickoff return for a touchdown that says God is real. But the key is, what are you going to do with that reality, right? I mean, are you going to just say, wow, that was an incredible experience that we went through, and we got a lot of gear with number 3 on it, and it made national headlines for a while? Right. Or are you going to lean into that reality? I talked at Chapel that following week about don't miss the miracle. You know, we witnessed a miracle. There's the man, you know, the young man was dead.
Yeah.
You know, he was without 9 minutes, you know, of compressions. And don't miss that. And for some people, it was don't miss the miracle. Others, I said, you know, don't waste the wake-up call. It's a wake-up call for all of us that witnessed that. We now are witnesses, if you will, to what God did in our midst.
Yeah.
You know, and by God's grace, He spared us. But, you know, how is that going to impact your life, this reality thing about God? Are you going to now pursue Him? Are you going to obey Him? Are you going to reach out and build a relationship with Him? What are you going to do with this? That really is what I hope comes out of this much more than some of the other things.
Did you see guys respond pretty well
Absolutely.
to that? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The discussions around what happens after you die,
Yeah.
you know, to, you know, what is prayer always answered? Because the reality is, as we talk that next week, more than one player or coach said, you know, I've been praying for my sick aunt for years, and she didn't make it.
Yeah.
You know, why didn't God answer that prayer? You know, or did He? Or what? How does that all work? How does this prayer thing work? You know, that was one of the things we talked about that following week was, you know, everybody prayed. Why did they pray? Why does all of a sudden the whole nation pray when they see this? And I said, I believe the reality is found in Scripture that we know that God has placed that in our hearts, that eternity is in man's heart.
Yeah.
And we know there's more. And so people reach out at that moment. And so that's evidence alone that you know there's something more. Even if you may not be following Jesus or have a faith in God, you know there's more. And that's why people are praying. So, again, don't miss this miracle, this opportunity, because God's given you a great opportunity right in front of you. You know,
It's almost like there's a default within this, right, Len? Like a default button when tragedy comes. And because I hear this a lot, like at the Super Bowl, we were there a little while ago, and we heard a lot of it's social media noise. So I get it. It's social media. But people are like, oh, you're only praising God because you either need something or because you just won. Yeah. And so, of course, you're on the top of the world. Sure. But what about when it doesn't work out? Like, what about when the Bills have a heartbreaking loss at home in a snowstorm against Cincinnati, that same team? You know, are you praising God then? Like, so I think a lot of people, though, still when they see a tragedy hit or something happens, the default
for sure
is to prayer.
Absolutely. They're reaching out for help. Yes. Right? Which is evidence in itself, right? That God has placed eternity in the heart of man. Right? And you know there's more. Right? And so, you know, the conversation's primarily around prayer, you know, and life and death. You know, it's especially for these young men who are invincible in their minds, right?
Yes.
Damar's 24-year-old, strong young man about to play the game of his life, you know, on Monday Night Football. And moments later, you know, he's flat out, you know, and in the valley of the shadow of death.
Yes. Yeah.
And so one of the realities we talked about was that God is available. God is with us in Psalm 23, right? Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of the death, and we witnessed him walk through it.
Yeah.
We were, you know, feet away from him walking through the valley of the shadow of death. But the promise is that God is with us. He is available, that we can reach out, and He is real. And that opportunity is one that we don't want to waste, and let this slip by and not give it the weight that it deserves.
I'm wondering what your reaction was in just seeing the way Damar was responding. And I mean, we were in Phoenix at the Super Bowl, and there's Damar Hamlin, and that's 5 weeks after everything happened. As we speak, it's about 2 months after everything happened. On what was it, January 2nd? It's just remarkable to see all that's taking place in such a quick time.
Yeah, only God. I mean, only God, for whatever reason, and that's, you know, as I spend a lot of time, like I said, in the defensive back room. That's where I coach. That's where they allow me to hang out with those guys. And so I have a good relationship with Damar the last couple of years, you know. But now, as he's in our facility now, starting to do rehab and starting to get his body back, we're having those kind of discussions about, Damar, what are we going to do with this? Yeah. You know? And just he's a wonderful young man, like so many of our first and second year players. Very generous heart, you know. But he's got a lot on him right now, trying to figure out his life and this new reality that he woke up into.
Right.
And
I was just imagining it, waking up and seeing like 8 million people, amounts of money were donated, and it's just got to be, it had to be overwhelming for him.
Very
I
much
even
so.
think still, even though he was featured at the Super Bowl, it still must have been overwhelming for him.
Yeah, for sure. And one of for the listeners, I would ask that we continue to pray for him, even though so much prayer has been directed in his way. That we continue to pray for him. Because he just has to continue to process this, whether he plays football or not, getting his body back. But God's given him a platform now that we want to help him, and we ask that he would steward it well.
Yes. Yeah. Well, he is Len Vanden Bos. Len, we could talk about a lot of other things, but I think this is probably where we end the conversation, just because I think we could have you back on, and I want people to hear your story, and I think like you said, you have a heart for prison ministry.
Yeah.
I think that's the next time we chat.
Let's do it.
But I think this time was just perfect to kind of talk through what went on and kind of the role that you have. So I appreciate you, man. Appreciate all your
thanks for having me
prayers, and we always are praying for you. We know the unique platform that God has placed in your life as well, to be able to work and be around so many influential people, influencing the influencers, if you will, for the Lord. So
to God be the glory, right? For whatever reason, all of us, have been invited to be co-workers, in the place that He's placed us, and the opportunities and doors He opens up. And my prayer for all of us that are listening and for what you're doing is that we just steward those opportunities well, right? That we continue to obey, to walk it out, trust Him for the results. He does all the work. We just continue to be faithful, planting and watering, and giving Him the glory for it.
Yeah, that's really good. Len, thanks. Thanks again. Hey, thanks for watching us here on Sports Spectrum. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel right here. Check out some of our other videos and podcasts, and then go to our website at sportsspectrum.com.